Happy Thursday. It is October 21st, 2010. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. I am joined by my co-host, Chris Geo of truthfrequencyradio.com. We have an awesome show in store for you, so if you would like to join us for the text chat, that's over at truthbrigade.com. And topic tonight is UFO Disclosure with Tobias Lars. He is author of Listening to the Sun and Awakening Souls. Lots to talk about tonight, but how the heck are you doing tonight, Chris?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I've been looking forward to the show all week. I've been wanting to speak with Tobias firsthand, and also the topic is just one of my favorites, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Tobias is the man for sure. And, of course, you've had lots of guests talking about UFO disclosure and such. Are there any maybe predictions running around out there in Internet land maybe for when we're supposed to see another showing or landing?
Well, we're living it right now. That's what's beautiful. On 10/13/10 was one of the big predictions by Stan Fulham in his 325-page book, Challenges of Change. Now, he is a former NORAD director, and he said starting on October 13th and beyond, we're going to start seeing displays. A friend of mine from Kansas called me up today and said that she saw 5 orbs again in Kansas, and there's been sightings ever since October 13th, but we have to wonder that he's a former NORAD director. Are these sightings real, or is this just part of Project Bluebeam?
Exactly. I mean, that's because, I'm sorry, these sightings are nothing new. I mean, I know you've had your own personal experiences. I've had mine. Our guest tonight also has. So, the whole NORAD question to me comes into play. What are they really doing right now? And just because there's something unidentified in the sky doesn't necessarily mean it's, from ETs. Okay, well, lots of questions tonight, but it's that time already, so we will be right back after this short break with Tobias Lars. So good to have you here this beautiful Thursday, Tobias. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. I haven't worn out my welcome. This is a miracle.
I think it's a miracle you keep coming back.
I love doing these shows. I love it. Thanks so much.
Oh, and Chris is joining us tonight, so I guess this will be the first time you get to speak. Tobias. Chris Tobias.
Hey, Tobias. I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and I have to say that you are an absolutely fascinating gentleman, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some of this UFO info with you and getting your insight on it.
Cool. Well, Chris, I've heard some of what you've done. Just recently, Christie told me about you, anyway, I like what you do. It feels really good, and I hope you guys can create some good sparks to help wake the planet up.
I hope so, too, definitely. I'm going to let Christie take it away, and then Christie, just let me know whenever you want me to jump in.
Well, you know what? Actually, why now? Now is a good time. I mean, lots of questions and things to talk about tonight, but I think, there's still a lot of people that want to hear more about what people saw on October 13th. I guess that was last Thursday, right? Or last Wednesday in New York and all of that hype. And you're a little bit, you're more familiar with that than me, Chris. So if you would, why don't you explain to Tobias, and let's see if we can kind of get a little closer to the truth there.
Absolutely. On 10/13, like I said before the break, we had the NORAD officer who predicted UFO displays over several major cities on 10/13/10, and also throughout the course of the next couple of weeks. And sure enough, we are seeing that. We're seeing the typical orbs up in the sky, and I'm not sure what they are. And I say typical orbs because we've had these sightings over and over and over again. Mexico City was just covered with these in one instance, and I think the video is floating around there somewhere on YouTube. So I don't really know what these orbs are. They could be government, they could be Project Bluebeam, or it could be some kind of satellites that the aliens are sending down to kind of monitor everything. Nobody knows. According to the story, supposedly the aliens that we've been working with said, okay, look, it's time for disclosure. It's time to let people know what's going on. If you don't do it, and you being the government, then we're going to make ourselves known. But like Chris Cowan said, until I see a spaceship come down with a little green man come out of it, I'm still going to believe that it's the government behind everything. And I think he even went as far as to say that he still is going to believe it's the government, even if he sees a spaceship come and land down, so with a little green man coming out of it. So, Tobias, what is your take on the event? Started getting videos throughout the world. I mean, they started showing up in Peru and Germany and Turkey, all over the place, these mass sightings of these spheres. Now, a lot of people have said, well, they're balloons, but balloons don't fly in opposite directions and then rejoin themselves and make big light shows in the sky when F-16s are deployed. So they're definitely not balloons. They already tried to fool us with that back in 19-something with Roswell. I think fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't get fooled again.
Thank you to the WHO. Right on. No, actually, I told Christie earlier, she called me a little bit and asked if we should talk about this. And I have not had time, and I'm actually looking at one of the YouTube videos right now as we're talking for the first time. And it is the daylight one where it seems to morph into several spheres. There's 3 spheres. You guys might have seen this. What I feel, and I've spent a lot of years, I'd say since 89, when I first came across Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. You guys might remember that one.
Excellent.
And I read that book, and as I started to read it, it started to, that energy, the whole feeling of it started to happen. And it didn't feel good to me. It felt creepy, to be honest, or it felt clinical. It felt the exact same way that we treat animals when we capture and tag them. Whitley's approach, I'm not saying anything's wrong here, but so I wanted to ask, because that stuff started to happen. I could feel it to start to come into my house. And I said, no, thank you, I don't want that. And at the same time, I met Joy at that time, and I'll tell you now, she was from a conservative Christian background. Literally, her ex-husband was, the deacon in the church, and they were, there all the time. And I always asked God, why are you putting us together? Because I was pretty much as radical as I am now back then, right? And that's a whole other story. But Joy and I were up on the Mogollon Rim, which is the high country in Arizona where it turns into Ponderosa pine trees. We were camping out. We decided to stay in the van that night for some reason instead of on the ground. Now, we had just met. We'd never talked about UFOs, this was just way out of her scope, and I had found no reason to do it. That night, we both felt, we got this horrible feeling of something is off, something is wrong. My mind scrolled. Is it bears? Was it those strange other campers? Were those the Deliverance boys? Do I need to be afraid of them? I was trying to find a reason why. Finally, we tried to go to sleep. I spoke up finally and said, I am feeling horrible. My gut is yelling at me, get the hell out of here. Later, we both told each other, and she's never thought of this before, she said, that was some kind of creepy abduction UFO that was scanning us. And we both felt it big time, and we got out of there and went off to a very public area. Not that protects you necessarily, but there was something about us shifting space that prevented it. 2 things out of this story. One is, we, as souls and pieces of God, have the power to interrupt any kind of abduction at any time. Any time. If it's done against our will. Got very clear. Well, part of this I wanted to know, so I asked, show me what's going on here. There's obviously some phenomenon, something's happening. Whitley Strieber, Communion, etc., and all the other things, Roswell, etc. And I asked very clearly, back in literally 1989 or 91, whenever it was, and I got a real direct answer and sort of a showing me, I'm not saying this is the final truth in any way, but it showed me who the little gray Zeta Reticuli were. And ever since those last 15 years or whatever it's borne out. What I was told was, they're here, some of them, they're literally humans from the future. Some of the humans today become they sort of reject their emotions, they reject sexuality, they go with a cyborg program, genetic cloning cyborg program. Emotions are dirty, let's just trust totally in science and go with science. They end up in about 1 billion years in the future. There's no time, it's all circular time. But they end up in a space-time that we would say 1 billion years in the future in Zeta Reticuli, where they are literally losing their life force. They can no longer keep cloning. They produce asexually. This is what I was told, back then. And so some of those, God or universal love source has, in their infinite mercy, a bunch of those life forces, those beings, want to come back home. So they have to come back to the exact time when the whole mess started. The whole mess of genetic cloning is starting right now in this 50-year span on Earth. So this is the time they have to come back to, and they don't know all the details either. Just because they're ETs or Zeta Reticuli doesn't mean they're all knowing. They don't know. They're being helped. So there's a hybrid program for those that want to come back home and reintegrate human, become human again, instead of these strange sort of cloned life forms. Now, there's not just one Zeta Reticuli either. There's, quote, good and bad ones of them as well. So that's just laying the groundwork here a little bit. These orbs I'm looking at right now from CBS News, a guy that came to Hopi with me, he could actually manifest these at will practically. During the daytime, he would say, let me call them in, and these sort of metallic floating spheres would show up. These feel very much like the same thing as those. I think it's a genuine display, this particular one. Now, I don't think they're manned craft. They are probes. That's my sense of it right now.
I've heard that before, that these could possibly be travelers from the future. Another theory that I've heard is that they're actually coming from within the Earth, from Shambhala, from the hollow Earth. Have you heard anything in that direction? Absolutely.
But that's not the Zeta Reticuli. There are, see, what we play with here, here's where it gets difficult with this whole subject. Because it's sort of like, we either want, like you said, Chris, in the beginning, I want a metallic ship that I can go up and touch, and I want some little guy come walking out, little green man, or I'm not going to believe it, right? That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, it's all light. It's sort of electromagnetic light, pulsing light, and we see, the thing is, there's a spectrum, just like there's a visible light spectrum or an electromagnetic spectrum. You go all the way from infrared to ultraviolet, right? Beyond seeing, you can only see this part. So it is in the UFO thing. There's a whole wide spectrum. There's physical craft by physical humanoid beings that look exactly like us. They are us. And then you have plasma ships, which are just energy ships, which is why they pop in and out, and they can multiply and divide and turn into 3 balls of light and then come back together or look like they're liquid. See, it's not all just physical or light. There's a whole spectrum in between. You have fallen ETs in the sense that they are simply mechanical, technologically wizard ETs. Some of the grays are controlled by what you could call the praying mantis ETs, and some of them are simply being used for a, quote, an evil agenda or a controlling agenda. It's the old elephant story. If someone comes and looks at the UFO phenomenon and touches only the trunk of the elephant, they're going to say, well, it's soft and pliable, and this is what it is. I've seen it. I've touched it with my own eyes. You can't tell me that's not the way it is. That's true, but it's not the whole story. There's also someone holding the trunk of the elephant. The blind men touching the elephant, that story. You get 5 blind men, go up to an elephant, and they're all going to describe it differently. Well, it's the exact same thing with the UFO phenomenon, because we are basically blind on this planet. We are the blind men trying to investigate the UFO phenomenon. So we have genuine experience, but that doesn't mean that's the only experience. It means that is one human experience. Whitley Strieber has his, What's the guy's name? I actually trust this guy because of his heart. He calls him the Heinz 57. Clifford Stone. Mm-hmm. Clifford Stone, in my opinion, is telling the truth about these beings. Now, we have to remember, years ago I made a tape called The Gods Are Afraid of Being Human. Mm-hmm. A lot of humans have a knee-jerk worship reaction. This is not correct. This is dangerous. Because just because you're an ET doesn't mean you have to be good. Just like when we happened to fly over the New Guinea, during the Second World War, and the GIs landed in these headhunter regions or cannibal regions in New Guinea, the GIs and the airplanes were worshipped as gods. Does that mean all those GIs were really good men and you could trust them? Absolutely, of course not. So the same thing is applying here. Just because you have a spacecraft that flies and can jump space-time doesn't necessarily mean you're, quote, a loving being. Some of those beings are very much interested in controlling the Earth for their own purposes. So there's a hodgepodge here. I like when Clifford Stone says there's the Heinz 57. That's my understanding, too. There's a whole spectrum of different races. The inner Earth thing, Chris, I am not sure it's an actual physical inner Earth, but it has to do with dimensions. And inner Earth is real. Yes, that feels real to me. But if we travel to the pole, I think Admiral Byrd, when he first saw this, it's not that he actually went into the inner Earth. He was moving through time-space. He was actually flipping into another space-time on Earth when the Antarctica, when that landmass was and still is, because it's still reverberating in that space-time, populated with mastodons, big animals, humans, and so forth. See, the thing that gets complicated is because we're also dealing with multidimensionality here. Same with Bigfoot, by the way. The reason Bigfoot's so strange to people, because it's physical at sometimes, and sometimes the time shifts in out of our space-time. And this makes it very, very strange for people. We have to widen the scope of our ability to perceive this phenomena to get the big picture.
Well, have you heard of critters? Astronauts have called them critters. Some people call them rods. They're basically living organisms that live in space, which come into our atmosphere, and they're huge, miles and miles and miles long. But they come in right outside of our vision range, and they'll feed off of our atmosphere, get food and water, things like that, nutrients from our atmosphere, and then take off and just fly through space. On that note, is it possible that these orbs are actually the beings themselves, maybe even a spiritual being?
Yes. See, this is another aspect of this phenomenon. Now, and here's an easy way for me to understand it. Maybe it'll help others. If you're a Babaji or a Yeshua ben David, Jesus Christ, or a Krishna or a Buddha, now these are big avatars. These guys have transcended space and time. They can take their bodies with them. They can dematerialize their bodies and rematerialize their bodies at will. Now, would a being that can do that, why would they need to materialize the spaceship?
Exactly.
There's no need for them to do it. Now, however, the Merkaba body, the Merkaba, which the Israelis, not the Israelis, the original Hebrews, I'm trying to hear their original name. I didn't quite get it. They tapped into that at the end of Egypt. Isn't it interesting that really most of the Hebrew thing is really Egyptian magic? Now, I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's the truth of it, because Moses was an Egyptian magician, and he learned all that stuff from Egyptian magic, inner initiations. But they tap into the Merkaba, is teaching that came from originally Atlantis. Now, I know that's far out for some people. But then to Egypt, and then the Hebrews borrowed that from Moses, because Moses was helping them get a jump start on their civilization, out of slavery. So the Merkaba is that pyramid that is two pyramids. One's pointing down, one's pointing up in 3 dimensions.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tobias. Hold that right there, please. It's that time. We will be right back. Tobias Lars on Truth Brigade Radio. We do have a caller on the line, but Tobias, if you could please continue, then we'll get to the caller. You left off on the explaining the Merkaba. And
yes, I do feel the Merkaba was a way then in the initiation school, starting in the halls of Amenti and the Atlantean priesthood and that then was brought to Egypt. Egypt was basically an outpost of Atlantis, old Egypt. What we know as Egypt mostly is the end of Egypt. Whenever a civilization is falling, they are corrupting themselves. You know, when Rome was falling, that was not a happy picture. When Egypt is falling towards the end there's lots of misuse of power, you know, lots of bad priests. It's the normal story. And if America doesn't watch herself, we'll go. It's when an empire starts decaying that you get all kinds of horrible things. So Egypt was very beautiful in the beginning, and at the end it was doing some nasty, nasty black magic stuff. Anyhow, the Merkaba is an ancient teaching of actually activating our natural energies in our body. The inner body awakening that I share with people is a practical way for people to do this for themselves, you know. Now, I happen not to particularly like the Merkaba. It feels a little too mathematical to me, a little too harsh angled with those pyramids. I like to use the softer heart field, the round donut-shaped field with a thin hole in the middle donut, which mimics perfectly the Van Allen belts, the actual electromagnetic field that the Earth has around it. The reason we have northern lights is because those fields come in tight at the north and south poles. You don't get northern lights, you don't get lights in the sky, aurora borealis at the equator, because that's where the Earth's energy field is very, very powerful. I like that soft, rounded field because I feel like a child of the Earth, and I think we are. The Merkaba is a little bit more wizardry, a little bit more mind trickery. That's just my opinion. It's a little more angular, a little more harsh. But that is the teaching that was translated from the Atlantean, then to the Egyptian mysteries, and then on to Moses and Kabbalah, Merkaba. So, through doing that exercise, though, to activating your own energetic field, you can get to the point, now sounds crazy to most people on the planet, but St. Joseph of Cupertino used to float up in the air just from his love for God. There's been lots of stories of people levitating. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but it's true. At a certain point, a soul is able to dematerialize that which was energy and coalesced into cells and bones and a body. They can dematerialize that. That's what happens with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. Those beings, when they travel through space and time, don't need a spaceship. So they have this field around them that is simply part of their beingness. And so these are sometimes being called plasma ships because they don't have a solid physical form, where they're actually a being, an ascended master, if you will, a awake person, a fully realized God being. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that.
Wow, I love that, Tobias. So many questions, but our favorite alien from Canada has been holding on the line quite a while. So, Tracy, welcome to the show. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, Christie. Hi, Chris. Hi, Tobias.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hello.
Oh, doing great up here in the Great White North.
All right.
I just felt I needed to chime in on the events last week, and would love to hear your comments on my thoughts, too. What I'm feeling is what we're going through right now is not a new thing. There also is no new world order. Same world order, same guys, same thing, doing the same ridiculous stuff. Now they're trying to pull aliens out of the sky. They're not doing it to make us feel good about ourselves. They want us afraid. No one panicked, so they're probably really upset right now. And what's really positive to me about the whole thing is because there was no panic, and because there's only one thing I've found in my studies of the little bit of history we get to hear. Rome always falls. Always. So we'll get through this. Do I believe in aliens? Yeah. Do I believe they'd come in like that? No. Are they going to come down here and save us? If they do, we need not to listen to those people. If they come down with a galactic federation of light, a big name that we'd use, run. And
Amen, Tracy.
You know, that's all I'd have to say.
Is this going to come down and rapture us on a big mothership?
You know, if he does, that, you know, that's lovely, but you white people can go. I'm staying here.
Now listen, I'm gonna share what I feel is a foolproof method to sift the wheat from the chaff, quote, the good from the bad aliens. So one thing to remember, just because they're technologically superior more than us doesn't mean they're good-hearted, you know, necessarily. Just again, like, yeah. So, but that incident with Joy and I on the mountain, those were not guys I would like to have channeled messages from, and I don't want to have them come talk to me in my bedroom. I'm not interested in that. Because they didn't feel necessarily evil, but whatever was controlling them felt soul-controlling, soul-draining, and they weren't really interested in nice exchange. They were interested in getting something from us.
Yeah.
And so now our gut woke up big time and said, get the hell out of here. Now, if you're drinking up on the mountain and you're completely unconscious and you haven't felt anything forever because you've been through normal school system and they've trained you not to trust your body feelings and your intuition at all, then you might not feel that warning that we got from our souls, you know, and then you might be fair fodder for these guys. You know, I'm kind of kidding, but not really. So there is a foolproof way, which is this. We get in touch with our own inner direct connection to Source, to God. It will tell you, should I be involved with these beings or not? And if you get a no, listen to it. Get away. It's just like when women are dating. If that guy gives you the creeps, don't go on a second date. Right?
Yeah.
So don't be dating any creepy aliens. It's my advice.
Look, it's on mainstream media. It was a guy from NASA who came out about it. What else do you need?
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step is we are here to save you because you need Daddy. Because we're not going to really let you grow up. We don't want you to grow up. We want you to be afraid and scared. And we want to take all the men away from you and your lives. So you're going to need a daddy. Here's your daddy. He's big, he's gay, and he's probably sadistic. But here he is. No thanks. Don't want him.
Yep.
I'm not playing. So that's all I have to say.
And this doesn't preclude that there aren't, quote, angelic or good or supportive or guides or helper beings.
No, not at all.
Right.
I believe in that too. You know, I walked down the street last year and was followed by 2 7-foot deer. A bunch of people saw them. I turned around and looked at them and said, "Really, deer? Guys, you're on the sidewalk. I know you're not here, but, you know, thanks." So,
well, that's your particular, you know, your native heritage there probably, or, you know.
Yeah, you know, I'm Native and Black. I've been taught right from birth. I was lucky enough to have I had my great-great-grandmother still alive when I was little, who said, you know, you're going to see things, taught me to see things. I didn't even think it was weird. So, you know, I'm accepting, and I don't question a lot. Yeah. But,
so that's,
you know,
beautiful,
when it's on TV, I question. I got a question when it's on TV.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful example. Looks weird. You're manifesting as deer, but feels right.
Yeah.
When it comes dressed perfectly, and it has image consultants from Hollywood and Madison Avenue.
Yeah.
You know,
like in that movie, one of the movies with the hobbits, the young hobbit said, he said, "You look foul but feel fair," and like that. You know,
Yeah.
if it feels fair, it's probably right. If it looks fair, it probably isn't.
And originally on Earth, I have to pipe in. I know I'm piping in a lot here, but
Please, I love it.
originally on Earth, form and function and beauty went together. There was no misrepresentation of form. Now, when I say form, I mean the image, the actual physical form. We didn't have judgment that being a dwarf or a troll or, you know, like in the Lord of the Rings, or an elf or whatever, that any was better than the other. No one's better. They were just different expressions of God's source. You know, being a dwarf was wonderful. Being a troll was wonderful. Nowadays, we make fun. We've judged trolls as worse than angels. It's just not that way. It's just a different expression of the same thing. It's the same thing as having all the different doggies. Yeah, we all love Mr. Bulldog and we love Mr. Greyhound. They're very different, but we love both aspects, you know. And we've gotten away from that on Earth. Somehow we've judged angelic stuff as always being better than trolly stuff. It's not true. It is just different expression. So the first step, and that's the fail proof, the fail safe, the proof, is how does it feel to my spirit? First step to be able to do that is you need to be in touch with your spirit enough that you can hear the messages from your spirit, from your soul, from your ancestors, from God, from goodness. If you can't do that, that becomes a first priority. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then the rest will take care of itself. But there's been an orchestrated plan on Earth to blow out the solar plexus chakra, especially in men.
Yes.
Literally blow it out with guns, with cannonballs, with harakiri, with shooting, killing each other. We want to shut down that feeling chakra, the third chakra, so that men are totally devoid of intuition, because then they can be completely fooled and mimicked into just simply following orders and being seduced by form. So one of the things that the devil, quote Lucifer, real controller guys, are really afraid of is people really learning to hear directly inside themselves from the real source. Because once that happens, you are not foolable. No one can fool you again. It doesn't matter how pretty, how fancy, how perfect the hologram, you will not be fooled.
How can we get to that state where we can feel it ourselves and trust our intuition?
Well, I mean, the short answer is to get hooked back up with God again. And, you know, that sounds like, oh, no, not more religious stuff. I'm so tired of that. No, it's true. Get hooked up with your true self, your real essence, you know. And once you've met people that you can tell they're very self-contained or directed, they can feel themselves. They know what feels right for them and doesn't feel right for them. And they feel very different than someone who is needing people's approval or wanting to convert people or convince other people, or, you know. So the real immunization against being fooled by any false ETs or just negatively oriented ETs, you know, they're actual ETs or false flag government operations and all that, is you need to learn to be able to feel again. To feel your third chakra, which is your butterflies in your stomach, you know. You need to go out and sit, put your feet in the grass, put your feet in the water, get out of your head right now. If we simply drop our attention, just physically notice your heart. Just doing that simple act, noticing your heart, your mind will start to quiet down. It just stops thinking as much as fast. And the inner body awakening, it's an ancient method. Kids do it naturally. Watch your dog. They're feeling their inner body the whole time. They don't have the concept of not feeling their inner body. Dropping down and feeling your body, being part of your body. The body is a part of your soul essence that has coalesced as physical cells. It really helps to get out of our minds. Get out of your mind. I'm out of my mind. Good, good. I like you out of your mind. I like you in your body. Right?
Absolutely.
This is when you can't be fooled again. you know. And so you need to, we eat every day. We go to the bathroom every day. You know, you will get food every day. Most of them on this planet. So if you take the time to eat physical food by hook or by crook, you should eat some spiritual food, hook up, every day. And if you're not willing to do that, and you want someone to solve it for you, but you're not willing to go inside yourself and talk to God inside yourself or talk to your own soul, you're not really trying. I'm just being direct. You're just talking about it. You're not doing it. So learning to, okay, I know the only way to be securely anchored in this creation. If you ever want to learn, how would you like to have your own spaceship? Is that enough motivation? They're going to charge, if they ever create an anti-gravity vehicle here on the planet, they're going to cost $1 million a pop right off the bat. Right? People are going to pay for that. And how would you like to have an anti-gravity, your own personal spaceship that you never have to change the dynamo propulsion system on? You don't ever have to lubricate, you don't have to fix it, you don't have to worry about crashing it. That system is the same system that Jesus uses, St. Francis uses, Babaji uses, you know, Melchizedek uses. These guys, St. Germain, they have no need for that physical spaceship. It's just a bunch of maintenance. Your natural spaceship, your plasma ship, your Merkaba, if you like it that way, or your heart field, will help you travel through space and time in a much cleaner, better way. So this is all available inside us. Every teacher says this all the time. The question now becomes, it's not easy, because we've strayed from the mark on this planet. You know, you're going to have to face your own stuff. You have to face it down. You're going to have to deal with your insecurities, your fears, your wanting approval. You're willing to sell out for money. You're willing to sell out for sex. You're willing to sell out for power. All that stuff. No one gets a free pass. What, God's going to give just you a free pass but make Jesus sweat blood in the garden? No, it doesn't work that way. We all, when you face this stuff, you face the temptation of power. And we all have to go through those gateways.
FactBrigade.com is the website. Our guest is Tobias Lars. And Tobias, you said something pretty profound before the break about choosing, you know, about following the path and how Jesus had to go cry blood and shed blood in order to achieve that state and walk that path. But I have to disagree with that a little bit. I think we each choose our path, and we can choose the path of love. We can choose the path of pain. We can go hang ourselves from hooks until we're blue in the face, or we can sit under a tree for 20 years and meditate on this, detaching ourselves completely from our inheritance, our inherited kingdom, as Buddha did. He was born as a prince and then decided to live in poverty, basically, and detached himself from all worldly possessions. Is there more than one way to the source? I mean, we've got the left-hand path, the right-hand path, et cetera, et cetera.
And the middle path.
And the middle path, yes.
Yes. No, of course. No, I'm not saying that we have to suffer. The old way is the suffering way. There is, and in fact most of us are addicted to that, there's, you know, the no pain, no gain. Absolutely not. No, what I'm saying is, in order to get back to our oneness state, or feeling to be trusted with that level of dematerialization and manifestation and those kind of powers, every soul seems to go through temptations of how to use that. All the way to the top of gods, or what you would consider, you know, gods, there is, quote, the left and the right-hand path. There are beings that are much stronger than most humans that are bent on complete control. Maybe those are some of the beings that are controlling some of the Zeta Reticuli that they're using for their own purposes and making deals with secret governments and so forth. But I'm not saying we have to struggle and sweat blood the way Jesus did. Jesus knew what he was doing. If you want to know more about it, ask him directly. He still talks nowadays. He's got 1,000 million ways of speaking today. But yeah, no, I'm interested in, too, the easy wake-up, the enjoyable wake-up. I don't think we were meant to have to hurt ourselves, you know, to mortify ourselves. That word means to create death, mort, in order to wake up. And I think, from my understanding, Buddha didn't wake up when he tried that either. He tried the mortification of the flesh for 7 years, but that didn't work for him. And then when he finally let go and said, I give up, show me what's going on, that's when he finally woke up.
Exactly,
so, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Christie and I were kind of in a conversation offline about this, and she asked me, what's the most terrible pain that you've been in? And I said, well, I've never been in pain. There have been bad things that have happened to me, but, I've been in painful situations, but I always grow from them, and I always experience, and I find the love out of it because I've become a better person as a result, so there really is no pain, in my opinion. But,
well,
yeah,
that's true. That's one way to look at it, but it wasn't entirely the whole question. The actual question was, what is the greatest loss you have suffered? Because in my opinion, what Tobias said about before God is going to entrust you with those abilities, you have to be tested. It doesn't necessarily have to be suffering.
Right.
It's how we choose to perceive the situation. But I don't know. Tobias, do you think God is just going to hand people things without ever experiencing loss?
No, I think we learn to become pieces of the creation. Archangel Michael can be trusted by Source to do certain things. When you hire someone to work for you, you don't immediately give them all the power. You want to see how they do. I think some of that principle applies as we're waking back up. We do get tempted, in a sense, with power.
I love what you said about before you can be entrusted with these powers we speak of the universe. I mean, we're going to go through it. And, I certainly agree with Chris. We can choose love and we can choose all these other things, but what we can't choose not to go through the tests if we really want to be on that path. And anyways, Chris, please, I know you had some things to say.
Well, I totally agree. We can't choose whether we want to go through the test, but we can definitely choose how we perceive the test. And I believe that light beings are here. They're not here. They're not meant to suffer. They're not meant to go through all these negative emotions and feed these I don't want to go there. Let me just say that these interdimensional beings that are feeding off of our negative energies, we're not meant to suffer. We're meant to love. We're meant to spread love, and God will give us more and more as we spread this love. But yeah, of course, if we just take this knowledge and keep it selfishly, then that's not going to happen. But then we have to look at the definition of of loss as well. What is loss exactly? I mean, I had my whole warehouse raided and all of my business equipment was gone when I was working by myself, in the carpet cleaning business. Was that a loss? That made me go out and hire contractors and freed me up so I can start doing radio shows and doing things like that. I've had people die in my life. Is that a loss? Or have they just moved on to a better place? I've had relationships break up, and I've lost co-hosts before and things like that. And is that a loss, or did something better come into my life as a result of that? So it's really a matter of perception, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I agree with that. I've recently been experiencing, once you reach a place like the Russian nesting doll, sort of a bigger place where you can reconnect with the bigger you, your larger soul, then from that place of looking, that perspective, you look back and you go, that was perfect what happened to me, Exactly. And then from the inside sometimes, you're like, what the hell is happening to me? Right? Mm-hmm. And that seems to be, that's my experience too. But even with physical pain, you can take it, and the inner body awakening, this is part of it. You literally just you learn not to judge it, not to think, quote, it's hurting me. You just experience it as an experience, and when you don't resist it, you will actually start feeling that which you've termed pain is just an energy that's actually helping to heal you. And in a strange way, it energizes you. That's the whole philosophy behind acupuncture. Think about that. You're taking little needles and shoving it into your nerves. That's pretty weird. But the point of the needle there, is it actually gives your body all these energies that actually feel good. So there's a transmutational alchemical. I love that, Chris. Absolutely, yeah. It depends on perspective. And I use my dog as an example because someone was talking to me today about doing ayahuasca, and they asked, does everyone throw up, you know? Right? And I go, pretty much, yes. If you're a normal human being, I've only seen one person that didn't eventually throw up. But while you're doing it in ceremony, you're not doing it from a judgmental or programmed human perspective. It is just a natural function. If you ever watch your dog or cat when they throw up, they don't have all this drama about it. It's just sort of something that happens. And then then 2 seconds later, they're fine running off doing the next thing. We humans have history. When we purge stuff, energies, people die in our lives, like Chris said, or whatever, we think we have to be socially appropriate and mourn and fret and pain. No, that's stupid. You watch animals which live naturally. Elephants are super wise, you know. They honor their dead, but they don't mope about it, and they really move on with their lives. So there's something natural way of doing it where it really isn't painful. Is it painful to God that things are changing on planet Earth every day, massive changes, 200,000 people pass on every day? Does God go around mope and suffer about that? No, it's just part of life. It's just part of the natural movement of energy. And the more we can get aligned with that, the less we'll suffer, and the more of just natural flow we can allow and allow and allow.
Absolutely. In my family, I come from a Greek family, and, Greek and Native American, but the household was raised by my mother, who was Greek, so we were basically Greek. When my grandparents passed away, we had live bouzouki music, and we were breaking plates and celebrating because he passed on to the next plane of existence. It's a happy time, and yes, we mourn because that part of us is gone. You know, we miss that part, but everything should be looked at as a celebration, in my opinion.
Yeah, we can't change.
Absolutely.
We can't change change. No, change is happening. You can't change it.
That's where we get hurt. It's resisting it. I mean, all around or even in our personal lives. You know, we have a few questions, getting back to the other topic, but let me ask you this before we move on, is... you know, we've talked before about all of these horrific experiences that, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. And, you know, we look back and see that it's, you know, the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. But in dealing with emotions, Chris brought up emotions and feelings. You know, we're not supposed to, feed those emotions or feelings. But what do you think about that, Tobias? I mean, because simply avoiding them isn't going to make them go away. In fact, they're just going to build up and get worse and worse. And in essence, I think we're resisting the change or the reasons we're going through these lessons in the first place.
This is a huge, huge topic that deserves about 3,000 college hours to actually get. No, I'm kidding. It really is. On Earth, we've been bamboozled and befuddled and besmirched and obfuscated and, you know, about emotions. Emotions have a natural flowing place. I heard a good thing, a nice saying was actually on Oprah, a guy who has gotten very famous, but I liked his healing process. He was speaking as a shaman. He said, for instance, when he had to confront his dad about some things that happened growing up, he said, I was very angry with him and I expressed all that anger at him. I got it out. He said, anger is good in its place of expressing, you know, getting stuff that's collected, gotten compacted. It's sort of like an impacted colon. We're all walking around with an impacted emotional body, most people on this planet. We have an impacted, suppressed emotional body. Now, for it to come out, sometimes it needs to come out in ugly ways. But anger is good. Bitterness, not so good. The bitterness is the compacted anger, depressing stuff, but anger flowing has a natural function. My point with all that is there's a natural flow to all of it. Anger has its place. Fear has its place. Fear, even, the most hated emotion on the planet, has a place. Everything has a natural place. Now, emotions can be misused. There's truth also to the Native American saying, which I think is what Chris is talking about. You know, the two wolves, you know. The young boy goes to Grandpa and says, Grandpa, I feel like I have two wolves inside me. Now, by the way, as we know from last night's show, which, by the way, that was sweet, Christie, Wolfies are really sweet little guys. But for illustrative purposes here, Grandpa, I have a wolf inside me that's angry, that's resentful, that wants to get back at people. I have one inside me that forgives, that loves, that is more understanding. Which one of these will grow and take over my life? I'm afraid. Grandpa says, the one that you feed will grow stronger and the one you don't will fade away. That's true, too. So if we are obsessively feeding certain emotions that are stuck, like a record player or a CD that's skipping, then we're not using emotions naturally either. If there's stuff we've suppressed and that has impacted us, our spiritual colon is impacted with massive amounts of suppressing my grief, suppressing my hatred, my anger. As a 3-year-old, my daddy said, don't cry. Little boys don't cry. And I had to stuff all that stuff. You need to get it out of you to get healthy, you know. John, you don't want to become John Wayne with a 40-pound impacted colon of fecal matter. You don't want, I know I'm being graphic here a bit, but you don't want to do that with your spiritual energies either. And emotions are a key point of allowing them. The word itself, emotion, means energy in motion. E-motion. If you ain't moving it, you're dying. You need to let it flow naturally. Now, there's a huge thing on Earth. We've for so long lived without moving our emotions naturally that we have a lot of backup. When you're first unclogging, you know, a clog, it's going to be some ugly stuff that comes out at first. Once you're flowing naturally again with your emotions, you're going to have very little. You're going to have resentment and anger and grief. All that stuff's going to pass very easily through you. When you first unclog it, you're going to have some work to do.
Okay, very well said. Yes,
Let
please.
me jump in for a minute and get your take on something, Tobias. From my understanding, where the research has taken me up to this point, and it's subject to change, I believe if we're not changing our perspective constantly based on new information coming in, then we're doing something wrong. But from what I understand, there are these interdimensional beings which have been here since the beginning, and they feed off of our negative emotions, our hate, our fear, our anger, etc. And we even see this in ritualistic sacrifices way back in the Mayan times, even further back, where they incite so much fear in the victim.
Even
through
today.
These rituals. Yes,
That's what
and then
they're
think
doing
about
today.
Exactly. So when we entertain these feelings, these fears, and these negative emotions, we're actually feeding them and just giving them exactly what they want. And that's what I try to stay away from, definitely, and try to keep a positive perspective on everything, no matter what. And it's hard. I'm not perfect. I'm not Jesus or Buddha or anybody like that who can walk it perfectly. But
or Tobias.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, right.
Ask
my girlfriend. Shall I get Joy on the phone and explain to you how perfect I am?
Walk on water. Don't lie.
Joy is sticking her finger in her throat right now and throwing up. All right. Hopefully she's not listening. No, I hear what you're saying, Chris. This is a very tender knot point, a Gordian knot point of learning. There is a harvesting of energies, feeding off of negative energies. Now, here's the thing. This happens during child abuse. This happens during soul abuse. This happens during, mental shamanic abuse, which happens spiritual abuse. You get someone to feel something, like fear. You trigger the fear in them, and then you make it socially unacceptable to actually let that flow through them. See, once it's triggered, if it just flows out of you, it's no longer in you, right?
Yep.
But if you make it socially unacceptable, in other words, like this, you're at the Marine Corps base camp, training camp, and you're scaring people. with whatever, yelling at them, you pukes, etc., or telling them you're not going to get out of here, your mommy doesn't love you anymore, I'm your mommy, right? And then you make it socially unacceptable for them to express naturally. What are you, a yellow-bellied, pussy? And you make it so that you're not allowed to express certain feelings. Then it is like swallowing a fish hook, but you're not allowed to throw it up. You have to keep it inside you. Those festering feelings, those festering, compacted feelings inside you is what the negative interdimensional beings feed on. They literally get you to keep producing that same emotion over and over again by irritating your wound, your soul wound. That's what feeds them. Denied feelings. Denial feelings is what the denial spirits feed off of, not open expressed feelings. Once the abused wife or the abused man or dog or anything, once they actually finally speak up to their abuser, and if they're expressing it with rage and they're foaming at the mouth, but they're getting it out of them, that is super healthy, because then no longer can that abuser keep feeding off of their denied fear or denied anger. It is denied emotions that feed these, quote, interdimensional beings. And they literally do harvest these emotions out of us. But once you get them out of you, they no longer can feed off of you. So this doesn't mean that it's a fine line. God does not obsessively go back to feed to. If you're obsessed with something that keeps repeating, that's the sign that you need to deal with it. Now, you got to be careful you don't suppress what's already in you. That's why, for example, I'll give you an example. Gandhi had suppressed rage and anger in him. Gandhi had suppressed rage and anger in him. I would suggest this is the only reason that he could get assassinated. Because once you don't have a target in you, an energetic target, you can no longer be gotten. I know what I'm saying is kind of shocking. Well, what about Martin Luther King? What about Jesus? Ditto. They also had some suppressed rage and anger in them.
That doesn't mean they won't surround you. That doesn't mean that they'll always be trying, but you're absolutely right. God's power is greater than any of this evil or what people would call Satan or the devil or demons or any of this garbage we're talking about. And I believe as long as you hold that truth and toe that line, you're always going to win.
And Tobias, I had this comment that I wanted to make before the break, and I completely forgot what I was going to say. So let me turn it back over to Christie.
We do it all the time. I bet you Tobias will get out of you the way you're doing that.
It's working. Not only is God erasing my mind, but I can erase Chris's mind. This is really cool.
Yes, and
we're talking about interdimensional beings, and I don't know. Let me ask you this.
Chris, I just wanted to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What about the opposite? When we hold the love in and we put around this kind of force field around us to keep any kind of love from coming into us, how detrimental is that to the self when we put up those blocks like that?
That is the trauma is part of, like you were bringing up, there are beings that want us to be traumatized and kept as these vibrating fear machines that they feed off of the literal. Imagine, when someone comes out, is the sweats or the steam's just coming off your body, if someone's really hot or something. In winter, if you're sweating, that'll look like that. Well, that's what our electromagnetic energy is coming up. They are harvesting. Certain beings like to harvest our energies. One way to make sure is to shut us down from our lifelines. This is not Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but Who Wants to Be Awakened, right? But you get no lifelines when you're working with these evil guys. They don't want you to be able to hook back up with Jesus, with God, with someone that can help you, because then they will no longer be able to control you. So one of the methods is to make sure you block help out. It's sort of like, imagine an anorexic girl, That's a real conundrum. That those beings or those energies that have a hold of women that have that kind of distorted body image, and you can't get inside to tell them we love you. They just cannot receive it, hear it, and believe it. It's a very dangerous place, you know. Yeah, it's one of the methods that, quote, these negative entities use to cut us off.
I remember what I was going to bring up before the break. We were talking about suffering and how these beings are just basically sucking off of our emotions. So would you say that the term the suffering are blessed is flawed?
Say that again?
Would you say that the term the suffering, the ones who suffer are blessed, would you say that that's flawed?
If it's addictive, masochistic suffering, yes. If it is a temporary going through because you are cleansing some old karma or something that has attached to your soul, no, then it is freeing. The proof is in the pudding. By their fruit you shall know them. If it is a temporary process, but if it becomes this addictive thing where it's taught in Buddhism and in Catholicism, that the poor shall always be with us, and, blessed are the poor, it mainly puts out the wrong image, I think, because the main deal on planet Earth is this is meant to be a good time. It's meant to be some fun, some sex, some beauty, some play, some enjoyment, some just playing music, enjoying ourselves. This is meant to be a recreational planet. So when we're not willing to let go of the suffering, then it becomes an addiction and becomes kind of twisted and sick, in my opinion.
Okay. Christie, do we have a caller on the line?
We do, but are you ready?
I lost it again. I don't know what's going on with my mind tonight, but I guess the universe doesn't want me to ask these questions, so.
Okay.
No, go for it. Did what I just said, did that make any sense to you, Chris?
Oh, yes, definitely. It made perfect sense. I had another question for you, and I wrote Christie in the Skype chat that I had one more question, and as soon as I finished that sentence, it just eluded me again.
This is what Eckhart tries to do to people in his seminars. He tries to get their minds to go still. Now, this doesn't always make for good radio when people are just sitting there breathing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay. But one thing that I can't wrap my head around, and maybe you can help enlighten me on this, is infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. I believe that the source is infinite love. How can God, the source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, how can that do anything negative? How can that have a vengeful spirit and a hateful spirit and bring these negative things into your life? It's an oxymoron to me.
Right. And this is the classic final question. This is the final question. Why did God create evil? Or why does he allow it? Or she allow it? Or why does it exist?
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. TruthBrigade.com is the website, and we are going into overtime with our fabulous, very enlightening guest, Tobias Lars. And we are on the topic of infinite love. And what is infinite love? And how can darkness exist when there is only light? And how can we have all these negative emotions like hate and bad things happening to us, et cetera, et cetera? And I feel, my take on this is that we create all this negativity. It's not God that makes all these bad things happen to us. It's our own actions and our own walking away from the path that creates that. And what is darkness? Well, it's the absence of light. So when we don't have God within us, when we don't have the light within us, whatever you want to call it, I call it infinite love, because that is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. But when we don't have that, then people start to feel the darkness that's within us, and we start to feel the darkness that's within us. Tobias Lars, your take on that?
Let me just say this, though. I'm sorry, but where do children make the choice? How do they have a choice to make a certain path or to keep all wrongful, painful stuff out of their lives?
Example.
Well, I mean, you said that bad things that happen to people happen because of their choices. So then I guess I would just have to assume that, 3-year-olds getting sodomized today in ritual sacrifices are doing so because of their poor choices.
Is it possible that they chose that existence before coming here in order to gain some type of experience? Or let's take it an even step further. Let's talk about karma, for instance. What if that child was in a previous life the abuser and is coming back to feel that all over again? Now, I'm not saying that that's right, and I'm not saying that that's what I feel, but I'm just throwing out different possibilities there.
Well, of course, all of those things are possible, but I want to let Tobias answer. I'll ramble all night.
No, these are such primal questions. It's always the child that goes right to child molestation. Always. How can God allow that to be happening? Because it is such a trigger point for us and such a, horrific thing for most of us. So I'm going to try two little stories here that helped me. One, there's a group of wild horses. I know I'm switching here, right, but I'm not. In the Dakotas, I believe, there's a beautiful program on Cloud, the snow stallion, Cloud, the wild stallion up there. But there's a band of wild horses up there. Now, these guys are living pretty much alone. They're the direct descendants of the Spanish horses, and they've been sort of isolated up on this sky island. They've not had much contact with people. So they've lived relatively free. So let's say they're flowing with nature. Well, during the foaling season in the spring, when there's foals being born, they filmed this. They caught it. Where the stallion that we've watched grow up, he's like 2 or 3 years old now, one of the foals that is born to his mares is born with paralyzed back legs, or very bad back legs that aren't functional. The mare, normally, who would defend her foal to the death, or, defend it from any stallion or marauding, or even her own stallion, backs off, lets Cloud, this stallion now, walk up to the foal. He smells the foal. He loves his babies, usually. Something in him initiates an impulse in him to bite down in the perfect place where the neck on this foal, and pretty much sever the spinal column of this foal as quickly, pretty much instantly. And he kills that foal. Now, how do we as humans have reaction to this as we're watching with our belief systems? What is happening? I would suggest, my feeling is, that he was following a natural impulse. For some reason, it's better that that foal not try to live. No one's telling him to do it. He's not been damaged by human civilizations or programming. So there's some natural impulse here. Now, I'm going to go to another one. It's a beautiful set of books called the Taoist Chronicles. The Wandering Taoist is one of them, by Deng Ming Dao, a true Taoist who actually came to America. And these are fantastic stories, and I mean fantastic in the sense some of it you're going to think is fantasy. But it is true. In one of those stories in his book, he talks about a brother disciple that he grew up with. Now, when they grew up, they started as little kids with these masters, these Taoist masters on Huashan Mountain. These are guys that truly, the stuff you see that's made up in movies, levitation, all stuff, these guys really can do. And his brother disciple, quote, chooses the bad path, the left-hand path. He uses these powers he's learned, these qigong, these energies, these martial arts. He goes out into the world and works for hire for some drug lords. He assassinates people. He has rings of prostitutes that he's making money off of. And so Butterfly is asked to go out and bring him back for justice, bring him back to the mountain, because he's misusing his power. Well, it takes him 2 tries, because the guy who's being bad, I forget his name now, is caught, but then talks his way out of it and says, has that beautiful silver tongue about good and evil. Evil is part of nature, let me go, blah, blah, blah. and then he has to go back and recapture him. When he finally brings him back to the Grand Master with the long white hair and the black, the whole thing, the Master that's immortal, that no one knows how old he is, no words pass between the Grand Master and, quote, this wayward disciple. It's just the three of them. Butterfly is watching his best friend growing up, his brother Monk standing in front of the Grand Master. The Grand Master says nothing the whole time, but all kinds of energy is passing between them. And then in an instant, the Grand Master simply does a heart palm blow. Now, mind you, the culprit now, he's shackled. He has no chance to defend himself. His hands are tied behind his back. The Grand Master does one short blow to his heart and explodes his heart and kills him. Was the Grand Master wrong? Was Cloud the Snow Stallion wrong in killing his foal? How do we see deeper what's really going on behind the scenes? I'm just telling these stories to give us, because I know Cloud and I know the Grand Master were not evil. So there's a deeper story, I would suggest, about what is good and evil.
I agree. And, I do want to throw out this possibility, too, that, I said the karma and the other things earlier, but there could just be dark forces in this world that cause these things. And the dark forces, like I said earlier, in my opinion, are an absence of God and an absence of that light. So we, as the quote-unquote light workers, if you want to, for lack of a better term, our job is to share this light with everybody so that when these bad things happen to the children through an absence of God, because the people who are committing this have an absence of God within them, then if the whole world was lit up, then we would have no bad things happen anymore.
Right. I agree. I've had clients with autistic children, and the first time we did, we asked their soul and God source, what's going on here? And we got a whole bunch of information on what autism is doing. In a sense, we got that some of these souls, not all, it's not always all or none, some of these souls are coming in as a request from the parents. The parents have so forgotten to feel their heart and be natural that a child or another part or aspect of themselves, another soul, is willing to come in and say, I'm not going to play along with you. The only time I'm going to respond to you is when you actually get real with me and you drop into your heart. None of your medicine, none of your fancy techniques, none of that stuff's going to work. The only thing that's going to work is when you get real with me, when you feel honestly with me, then I will come out from under my shell. So there's all kinds of permutations of this going on in this game of dark and light. The one thing I would say, Chris, is darkness itself isn't bad. I would say you can be aligned with space is not bad. The darkness in space is not bad. The light is good. The suns, the stars are good. They're effervescing. They're boiling this light like crazy off themselves. That's good. That's easy to see. But even the space, the empty womb itself, that is good also. The absence of light is not necessarily evil. I would say outside the harmony of the Tao, the light and the dark, if those are flowing, spinning naturally or as originally intended, you're good. The experiment of saying, I'm going to step outside of the natural creation and go against it, that in a sense I would call evil, in a sense, or not natural, and then that suffers its own consequences to come back home. I think it's just spiritual physics,
I totally,
yeah.
Totally agree. Let me ask you this. Well, what can we do to live well? What can we do to live within this light and just take everything in stride, I guess? I mean, I guess that's the answer that I seem to be coming up with through this conversation.
Here's another line I'm hearing now. Jim Morrison just showed up and said, tell them one of my lyrics. I'm kidding. But he said, in one of Jim's songs, he says, some are born to sweet delight, and some are born to the endless night. So there are beings that their right path is to wander endless night. What seems like endless night. Everything goes back to source. I think the role for us is to find what our original intention was. We feel good, we feel God, when we are living Tao, when we are living the natural flow. Some of us are meant to wander endless night, and some are born to sweet delight. But just like it's painful for the endless night spirit, he enjoys wandering the outskirts of the universe. That's their job. They enjoy that. That feels right for them. That's flow for them. It would be incredibly painful for that spirit to live in the center of a galaxy where there is no night at any time. There's just light all the time. It's too much for them. There's a right place for all created spirits. Finding that right place makes us feel good. We feel God when we are in our right place. And then we're also playing some games. You know, you can't have a game. Maybe we got bored in heaven and said, this is nothing, you know, nothing's happening. Let's see if we can create the opposite of heaven and see if we can forget. And see how, it's like kids playing hide-and-go-seek. Maybe it's a giant hide-and-go-seek game. But once you've had enough pain and you've had enough of it, you really can pull the plug on it and go back home, you know, at any time. My dad came to me after he passed, and he just said, I can't believe I forgot what we're really doing in this universe. I can't believe I forgot what we're doing, you know.
Very well said. Very profound, extremely profound.
That reminds me of a dream I had recently with, I can't believe we forgot that. We're going to go do this again, and I'm going to be the first to remember. But we forget every day, don't we?
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize what you brought up, Christie, about, you know, little children being treated. It's a horrible trauma they have to dissociate from their souls, and there's fracturing and mind control, and some of this is really horrible stuff. And so it had to start somewhere. You know, it's not all karma. If we all started cleanly, then someone had to come up with, hey, I'm going to strangle you and hurt you and fracture your soul energies. Someone initiated these horrible things. So I don't think it's, you know, once there's a slick teaching that sums it all up perfectly, no, I don't think so. I think it's more interesting than that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more than just karma. This bad thing's happening to you because you did something bad to someone else, for sure.
Hey, you know what I thought was really interesting? I could feel yesterday, I don't watch it much, but I watched some of the political stuff on Fox and CNN, and I could feel maybe it's actually being birthed. People are waking up that this artificial polarity game of Tweedledum versus Tweedledummer, Republican-Democrats, is actually a ridiculously set-up game. I actually could feel the collective going, wow, maybe we can have a third and a fourth and a fifth and multiple parties. You know, that would be a really cool manifestation.
Let me ask you this then. Okay, getting back to ETs, aliens, etc. You know,
Wait. I have to stop you, Christie. I love Christie going, That's Christie's way of saying, flush the whole thing. I'm not interested in politics at all.
No, not well, because it is political. Well, kind of. Yeah, I guess that is, huh? Yeah, I'm tired of those bloodsuckers.
I'm teasing you. I like when you go, yeah, sure, there's hope with the system. I know, anyway, go ahead.
I guess I just kind of shut that right out. But, no, getting to the aliens, it actually has to do with the system, because they're promoting their agenda, of course. We have alternative, media promoting their agenda, all military promoting theirs, etc. We've talked about Pleiadians, little grays, greens, etc. And then we even talked about the possibility that, maybe some of these abductions are actually future selves of the actual people being abducted. Of course, not all of it, but all these possibilities. But let me ask you, the aliens are coming, or, oh, no, we need to fight reptilians from Mars, blah, 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 etc. But what if the aliens are already here? I mean, who are the aliens? Maybe that's what we should be talking about.
Yeah. Chris, you got a thought on that?
I was asking you.
All right, that's fine. No, I think the Earth is a melting pot. That's why we all love that scene in the Star Wars movie, when they're all in the bar. Because literally that is very true, I believe, of what's going on Earth. There's beings on Earth that have never lived on other planets, sort of Earth humans. Some of them were gnomes, fairies at one point. you can just sort of feel Earth humans. It's a very gentle, sweet planet. Then there's been beings that have come from other planets. Yes, they came to Atlantis. Yes, they came before that. If we get disconnected, my dog just jumped on my couch and jumped on my phone. Are you guys there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. So on Earth, we have Pleiadian influence. We have some Arcturian spirits. We have reptilians. We have some ancient ones that have been here forever. The Anunnaki. Yes, I think all that's happening. It truly is a big melting pot. But the beautiful thing is, this is my opinion, God has set everyone up for an awakening, for those that wish it, including the Anunnaki, including the bad reptilians, the good reptilians, the Pleiadians. Everyone is here for an awakening. Everyone has their perspective on it, but there's something bigger going on, that there may be some beings in the universe that are guarding the whole situation on Earth. They're keeping the balance point. They're not going to allow us to blow the planet up, because that's stepping too far outside of it. They're not going to allow, quote, the bad little gray guys to come in and actually take over and mind control and set up a thing where they actually, present themselves as gods. It's not going to be allowed. We're going to be allowed to play with matches as much as we're going to be allowed, and then daddy or mommy steps in. There is a guiding, guarding, protection spirit on the planet, allowing the experiment, but we're not going to be allowed to, in a sense, it's not going to go into blowing up the planet. So there's a big melting pot going on planet Earth from all across the galaxy.
Someone asked earlier, are there aliens here, living here right now? Are there aliens who don't even know they're aliens? And if so, should we worry about these other beings?
Of course. No. I know people. I see them all the time.
Maybe we are the aliens.
Of course we are. I know Christie is an alien. Come on. She doesn't fit in here at all.
Yes, Jesus.
and we're all aliens. I mean, not all, but there's human spirits on Earth, and then there's beings from other parts of the universe. And it's sort of like forced integration. God's saying you all went off to your separate planets so you didn't have to deal with each other, but on Earth you're going to have to deal with it, I think there's lots here. Some don't know who they are yet. Some do. Very few do. The majority of us don't know. There is a veil of forgetfulness on this planet. When you incarnate here, there is a veil of forgetfulness. And then you have to sort of come back to a certain level of awakening to go, to even see your past lifetimes. And then to realize that I'm actually this galactic being is usually very scary, to be honest. When I have felt myself as a galactic being, I've prayed and begged God to please put me back in my box so I don't freak out,
Okay, so what if you're an alien and you don't know it? Or what if your neighbor is an alien and you don't know it? How do you tell the Martians from the Pleiadians?
Right. Call me. I have a small $99.95 DNA test. Call me immediately. It's called Alien DNA. Checking up on your alien neighbor DNA.com. I'll do it for you.
I have a question.
All right.
I had an experience. I'm sorry.
Can he answer it though?
How can you know? You can know. We're on a need-to-know basis from our souls, not from anyone else. From our own souls. You can know that first you have to be willing to. I'm trying to feel this. I know how it works for me. I'm trying to feel how. Again, you've got to get in touch with, show me what's happening here, God. Show me what's happening. Show me what's happening here. And you're going to be able to see certain different frequencies of beings and people. You're going to start seeing them as sort of pod and soul groups. There's groups of souls. I'm teasing here, but not really. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's real.
The Japanese are all coming off one giant mothership. I'm kidding. There's cross-pollination, and we do incarnate. I've had lifetimes as Japanese, samurai. But we do have certain soul groups and from other parts of the galaxy. And mixing here with the Earth humans. You have to be still, just the same way you would sit with tapping into your intuition, then ask, show me what's happening here. God loves to share it, and God's helpers, the cosmic librarians that work the Akashic records in the Book of Life, they are bored. You know how librarians get excited when you actually like what they do or you're interested in checking out a book? Well, it's the same with the angels. The angels that are in charge of all this info, they're like sad that not more of us are using our universal library card to learn about this stuff. But you have to get quiet enough, sort of, or still enough. I don't mean sitting quietly, but breathing a certain way, feeling your inner energy, your inner body, yes, your inner intuition. Intuition means inside. And once you become still enough that you can get a clear hookup to this universal library, all of it's available to you. That started for me about 15 years ago after going through some real deep, dark stuff inside myself, a dark night of the soul. I all of a sudden could ask anything, and I would get some pretty clear answers. You know, when I was quiet enough, I could tell when it was from real source. And it's borne out. Like I'd be given that information, and it would prove itself. Yes, that's true. You know, so we all have that inner hookup, inner dial-up. Dial up the internet, and I'm not talking dial-up. I'm talking about ultimate fiber optic instant communique. The internet will give you everything you need, and you won't get charged $100 a month for it either.
That's for sure. InnerBodyAwakening.com.
That'll help.
Of course,
that helps you.
Awakening.com. But Chris, you've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, you were
I'm sorry, I kind of took over here, so please continue.
No. I was wondering if you can comment on these. They look like grays, but they're about 6 or 7 feet tall.
Yes. They are the parental unit. Doesn't that sound like I'm the Coneheads or something? They are the parental unit, the actual human soul, that at this time on Earth, a bunch of us, see, time is cyclical, right? There's not just linear time, so we're looping. We're going in back and forth all over, right? So in this inception point, since we had that movie lately, on Earth, we're creating genetic cloning. We're going to be able to do some cyborg things. We're going to be able to sort of, some people get so scared by the emotion, they will decide that emotions are the source of all the trouble. Therefore, if we can sort of breed ourselves out of having emotions, and sex seems to cause a lot of murders and killing, you know, the three is a crowd and you're screwing my girlfriend, therefore I'm going to shoot you in the head. So sex and unclean emotions, there's a whole bunch of us at this time on Earth that decide those are the root cause of the problem. We need to have peace and order and structure. Those humans head down that Zeta Reticuli path. And then they also learn to make clones and little worker cyborg beings that are not even real souls in a sense. They're just sort of these cyborgs. But the tall ones are what the humans that make that decision now actually become down that particular timeline.
I had an experience.
Go ahead.
In that experience, I encountered these large 7 feet tall or 6 feet tall grays.
How did they feel to you?
They felt like scientists. They weren't neither benevolent or benevolent. They weren't too concerned if I was in pain, but they weren't causing any pain.
Right. Clinical. They're clinical. They're like, exactly, yes. They're just like scientists. Those are a bunch of us humans that we are free to experiment, and we go down that route. What we do reach, though, is a dead end, where we can once you take sex out of the equation, you can only clone so long till you run out of life force. Because sex is the fountain of erupting creation of new energy. That's cool. And so these beings are looking back. Could be an aspect of ourselves, too. You know, they have been given permission by the large orchestrator, the large director. You want out of this dead-end evolutionary, go back, and they will have interaction as we give permission. Doesn't mean it's part of you, Chris, and I'm not speaking in your personal life there. But sometimes it's, they're just learning they're coming to view you in a certain experience, and they're clinically observing sort of, oh, you're feeling emotion, and we don't understand that, or, they're learning from you by observing. They're sort of observers.
They downloaded my thoughts, was the only thing that they did, really.
Exactly. They are coming to observe. They're being given permission. I've had this experience too, by the way. You've given permission on a soul level, and they have been brought there by their teachers going, now come and watch this human and receive how they're experiencing this thing. Download that, take it home and study it, and tell me when you're ready that you actually want to participate instead of just observe.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's profound.
Yeah, that's my experience of that one. I've had that done with some other beings the giants that used to live on Earth. That there were giants in the Earth in those days. The Titans, they were the Titans. And they are still around. They're not on Earth in physical form. A friend of mine and I had direct experience for a period of a month or so with a particular emissary from the Titans. These are the Greek gods now, the ancient ones. But they're also in need of healing. They were allowed to come and observe some ceremony, ritual, awakening stuff we were doing out in the Superstition Mountains. They would come and observe us. I was kind of young at the time, and I couldn't see them, but I could feel them, let me tell you. One day, we're sitting back in an apartment in Phoenix. The screen door just opened, and something walked into the room, and it was one of these beings. They were observing us, what we were doing about opening our hearts, opening our emotions. Two men actually being honest with each other on an emotional level, because they were from a race of Titans where the ultimate was warriorship. That's why the Spartans, that movie that we recently saw about the 300, they were trying to be like these Titans, but they were at a dead end also and needed to relearn to open their hearts to each other instead of becoming these ultimate warriors with these thick layers of protection around their hearts. And it was very beautiful. He was there observing us, and we joked with him, good luck explaining this to your buddies. We're not coming with you. You're on your own.
Wow.
Yeah. This is all real. And by the way, I'm not special with this. I'm telling a little extra truth. But all of us, whether we remember or not, once we start remembering that we're all in this together. We're all helping each other. It's a beautiful orchestration going on. I was a young, dumb, and just learning guy when this happened to me. But on a soul level, this was beautiful. I understood what was going on. Over the years, I've been shown more of what was actually happening. So, yeah, there's a huge exchange of learning going on. Protect yourself. God is always your best guardian and best guidepost. And then you can have some really interesting experiences. I mean, that's pretty wild. You have these tall ETs coming to observe, and they actually get to make a copy. They sort of made a hard disk copy of what you were experiencing at the time, right, Chris?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As if they just taken my whole experience.
Yeah, they just copied that, and then they brought that back to their friends or their other, and they replayed that, on a holographic form, not taking anything from you, because they were just replaying that, and then they were going, holy cow, Prime Creator is telling us we have to learn to feel like this again. We thought we got away from this billions of years ago, and now we got to go back, and we're scared, and even within the Zeta Reticuli now there's factions that are saying, F that. We're not doing that. We're not going all the way back there to recover ourselves. We're going to just destroy Earth. So there's some, quote, evil Zeta Reticuli that are bent on destruction. And there's some that are bent on healing, It's a much more nuanced shades of, quote, grays going on, in our universe.
I think that goes with any kind of species, though. You've got, I mean, just take Americans, for example. They're hated around the world, but it's not us that are bad. It's the governments that are bad. And the governments are doing bad things. So we're going to have the good ones and the bad ones no matter what, in my opinion.
Right on. And we're loved all around the world. Americans are still loved a lot all around the world, you know.
Yeah,
so
it's bold. But isn't that, you know, part of the government's job is to disseminate propaganda and make us all hate each other? I mean, you know, even our neighbors.
Yeah, and how about this, Christie? I would say that there's lots of good people in government, you know, and that we can focus on that. Like Chris was saying earlier, if we focus on the positive, there are very good people with good intentions, and very few that are sincerely malicious, I would say.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to remember that, you know, that when you see the cop, you know, tasing some 72-year-old woman or something, overreacting, you know, that we not turn into that ourselves, but we really do what any true teacher has done. You know, Jesus did. He said, look, you don't know better, and I can't give you the justice you deserve because you'd all get killed, but we're going to try to help you wake up, you know? And so what I can't quite do it, but I was wearing my McCain Palin T-shirt today. I'm not kidding. Yeah, and so I thought, but I was talking to myself today. I go, I can't do it. I can't wear it in public. I just can't do it yet. I don't have enough love.
How was your experiment? Tell us about it. I bought a Raiders jersey specifically for that reason, and man, oh man, I'd do it again though. It was fun.
No, I couldn't wear it out in public yet. I just wasn't up to it today, so I didn't get to do it.
Oh, it's fun. Bring a camera.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, goodness. I mean, Tobias, so many wise words, and I just really appreciate you being here and staying extra time with us. I just have to say there's one thing you said tonight that I completely disagree with, and you said that you are not special. So I just, have to let that be known. I normally don't disagree with a thing, but that was one thing tonight that you, I think, are totally off at. Let me just ask you this. Gosh, you know what? It just kind of, never mind. Yeah, it kind of escaped me.
Chris will keep you from being too rosy-colored with me. Thank you, Chris, for being part of the equation.
Oh,
rosy-colored.
It was a pleasure, and really, I've heard so much about you. I've listened to you so many times, and it was great to get to speak to you.
Wait a minute, are you labeling me?
I get uncomfortable when you're all nice to me like that.
But I can't help it. I wish I could be nicer. I'm just, I don't know, some
we're
weird
the balance.
alien something.
We bring a great balance, in my opinion, because I come on and I oppose her guests, and she comes on and opposes my guests, and it works perfectly.
That's the way it needs to be. You got to have Lennon and McCartney.
Better.
You know. You got to have Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. You got to have, you know, Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne. You got to have Lennon and McCartney. It just works better that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about the balance, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we have to find. And this world is completely off balance. And on that note, let me pass it over to Christie so we can wrap it up, I guess.
Oh, I totally agree. More opinions are always better. And that's what's so great about this show. And, you know, Tobias, you've been a big part of my journey and path, and my star family in the text chat, and our regular listeners in the show. And, you know, I just feel so blessed to be here and to be able to share, these types of ideas. And, you know, special thanks, of course, to Danny Romero and Adam and Daniel and, you know, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, because we certainly wouldn't be here to do this. And, you know, I mean, just simply, you know, it's so easy, I think, to get locked in that box. You know, we know everything because this is what we've experienced, or this is what we've lived, or this is what someone's told us. And, you know, just to be able to hear ideas we've never heard before, I mean, it's been a major, you know, turning point in my personal growth, of course, because I've always kind of been seeking, you know, this isn't right, but I don't know what is. And, you know, even when you come to the revelation that every single thing you think you know is a lie, that doesn't mean you know what the truth is. And I just think that this journey and being able to experience it together is just absolutely beautiful. I'm just really honored to be here and to have these discussions, and thank you, Chris, for being here tonight as well. But Tobias, I mean, okay, call me Rosie or whatever, but, you know, I'm not, like, making things up. I wish I was as eloquent as you and could really explain how I feel for you and what you've done for me and my life and ultimately everyone I've touched, but it's just so beautiful. It's so magical, and really, I think all those things and more.
Thank you.
It's neither this or yeah, either or.
Thank you so much, and I hope we remember that really there is a big orchestrator. You know, we can call it God or love, that we can go back to. And so all this, when we get scared about anything, it doesn't matter if it's ETs or whatever, the big orchestrator has their hand, and we're part of that. Just remember that, and so that we don't, unless we enjoy being really frightened, but I don't anymore. You know, I enjoy us all awakening. I want a world where we start remembering again, and we don't learn through suffering and difficulty and war like Chris brought up tonight. So I just want to say thanks to you guys, and I love doing these shows, and I feel really good right now, and I'm going to go have some chipotle burrito, chicken burrito, and just and relax.
Right on. I'm going to get some salsa myself, homemade, by the way. Isn't it so cool to not have to rush out of here, Tobias, and do, okay, cool, thanks, love, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for extending the show tonight. And I guess with that, anything else, Tobias, you feel is important to you that we didn't cover tonight?
Good night. Good night. Let's do it again. We had several good potential topics come up as well tonight. But if we want to do another one on this UFO, because, you know, I'd be glad. Let's do another one if we want to next week.
Let's do it. All right.
All right.
Well, we're going to try to get to the topic next week, I promise. Thank you all for being here tonight, Tobias. Thank you. Much love to you and joy. Chris, of course, thank you for joining us tonight. And tomorrow it's going to be Soul Retrieval with Shaman Avalon Shakti. Thank you all again. Abundant blessings and love to all. See you tomorrow night. Truth Brigade Radio.